So I wanted to follow up, since I forgot to hit record, oops, during the last video, the awesome questions that people asked. And so I'm going to read them from the past chat file and see if I can do a decent job answering them again. So one of the questions asked is, would a fluctuation in temperature yield better results and be able to be selective, as in sex determination? You would change the temperature after sex determination to after the sex was determined and see if that improves survivorship. So I am going to go into share screen, back to this chat, and I think that's an awesome question. What we know is that temperature is determined in the first third of incubation. Sorry, sex is determined in the first chunk of incubation. And so maybe if we baked them, I don't know, 30, 31 for the first chunk, and then lowered it after their sex was determined, it's called the critical threshold. So if we lowered the temperature after the critical threshold, maybe we could still get girls but improve survivorship. That's an amazing question, and one that I don't know that the answer is known to. Bryn, I think you just found a question for a PhD. All right, so another question we had is, let's see, since we are facing climate change, do you think this will affect the quality of the eggshell? And it may help impact the gender. And climate change, we don't know, let's see, I don't know if temperature impacts the quality of the actual eggshell, but I do know that moisture impacts the quality of the eggshell. So with that in mind, if climate change changes the precipitation, so it makes it either wetter or drier, that could impact the quality of the eggshell. And if it's raining more, we run the risk of actually drowning the babies in the nest because the eggs are trapped in there. If they're surrounded by water, the eggs would suffocate or the babies would suffocate. If the nests are so dry that the babies can't dig out, they're stuck in the nest and could potentially perish in there because of higher temperatures and lower rainfall. So in terms of the quality of the eggshell, I don't know for sure based on temperature, but there could be far-reaching effects of that. So do eggshells contain calcium? They do. And if they do, could that, as climate change is affecting ocean acidity, could that impact the success of the eggs? Great question. And I'm going to actually hop away from Western pond turtles and talk about sea turtles, because sea turtles spend their time in the ocean, so they'd have greater exposure to the oceanic acidity. So a close relative to the Western pond turtle, sea turtles, and maybe not that close, but you can see that they are a species that has greater exposure to the ocean environment, but they're still nesting on land. So those eggshells are exposed to mostly a terrestrial environment. So in terms of the acidity, that could, if it impacted mom's ability to gather calcium, therefore lay healthy eggshells, that could be a substantial issue. But I don't know that the eggshells themselves would suffer from acidity since they are laid on land. That being said, eggs are laid in an area that does have exposure to ocean, like greater wave swells and things like that. So they do have exposure. And if you've ever put a chicken egg in vinegar, you know that the calcium of the chicken egg shell totally dissolves. You end up with this rubber little bouncy ball. And that rubber little bouncy ball is crazy stretchy and flexible, but it wouldn't allow the development of a chick inside. So I wonder if repeated crashing of waves and potentially higher acidity of that water could impact the calcium layer of the eggshells, but I don't know. Let's see, here's one that I missed. So during the actual chat, so a bonus, given the 29.4 degree Celsius pivotal temperature, that temperature that we found exactly produces half males and half females. So as a median value, does this mean that there is a probability of a limited number of locations that could support turtles? Well, since that 29.4 is specific to the western pond turtle, there are certainly a variety of temperatures and ranges of temperatures that could support the western pond turtle, but they are limited. But every species, as we saw the difference between the European pond turtle and the western pond turtle, and their critical temperatures are being so different, that turtles have evolved to their unique environment. And if climate change or any environmental change goes beyond the scope of what they can survive, that would further limit the habitat that they could access. Great one. And then the question adds, I'd expect locations with temps further away from the median would also occasionally shift even further away in a bad season, and that could have potentially negative effects. Absolutely. Maybe they could handle it for a season or two, but if there's a particularly bad season and they're already pushed to their extreme of what they can handle, that could totally do mega damage to a species survivorship. Ooh, another question. This one I didn't see in the chat either, so I'm glad I get to do it now. So this is not a turtle question per se, but what steps did you take to get where you are now? What led you to the research? What led you to becoming a teacher and pursuing this career path? Great question, Cami. I only look like I'm 12 years old. Look at the wrinkles. Can you see them? We're just gonna really zoom in. You see them? They're everywhere. So I wasn't always planning to be a teacher. In fact, when I was in high school and people said, you'd be a great teacher, you should be a teacher, I was like, oh gosh, no, I hate children. I still don't love children. But I love adults. I love that my students in a college setting are choosing to come to school. And that it makes my heart happy that I get to teach people who are choosing to be there. And that part I love. So how I found teaching is that when I was in college, I had been from preschool all the way through junior year of college, I had intended to be a veterinarian. I had built all the hours I needed to apply to vet school. I had shadowed vets. I had been a veterinary technician for 4 years. And at the kind of the 4-year mark of being a veterinary technician, I was like, oh, I don't want to be a vet. Oh my goodness gracious. I don't want to be a vet. And I had that, like, what do you call it? A quarter life crisis where I was like, I don't want to do what I thought I wanted to do. And I had been involved in Western pond turtle research with a graduate student named Becky. And I had spent a whole summer watching turtles not nest. It was riveting. We weren't very good at it yet, so we were unsuccessful at monitoring turtles. And even though we yielded zero freaking data for 2 months worth of intensive effort, I was there every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then we'd stay until dusk. Well, it turns out turtles like to nest right about dusk. Oops, we were leaving right when they were coming out. But that research really sparked something in me, and I asked if I could be part of that graduate lab, and I joined grad school and started, I did an internship in Washington and Oregon. So I interned at the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle, who did the research that I was talking about. And I also interned at the Oregon Zoo. I did a conservation internship there, where I first helped monitor turtles nesting in the wild in Washington. And then I went back to the Oregon Zoo to understand how they head start them, raise them in captivity, and then release them. So I did internships there that allowed us to get the permits in California to captively raise the turtles at the San Francisco and Oakland Zoo. And while I was doing that research, I was playing with baby turtles every day. My life was rad. But as part of grad school, you are required to teach at my school. It ended up being kind of a sweet deal. They paid my tuition if I taught some undergrad classes. So I basically taught zoology's lab when I was in grad school. And I loved it. I loved it more than working with baby turtles. And I was like, what? I have to follow this. So once I finished my master's, I immediately enrolled in a teaching credential program. And I did a 1-year teaching credential, and I taught high school for 3 years. And I really liked teaching, but I don't want to deal with the parents. I didn't like having to work around my students to be successful, like work with their parents to help them be successful. I couldn't have honest conversations like, I can't, if you don't intend to come to class, how do you intend to pass the class? Because if they skipped class, they were truant. And I like that in a college setting, everyone's choosing to be there. It makes for a much more honest relationship and ability to teach, because I could have honest conversations about, why are you taking this class? What are your goals? Maybe this class isn't critical to getting you to those goals. We can figure out another alternative for you to be successful in, like, either another class or how to approach this class differently. And that's what led me to teaching. I taught at Santa Rosa Junior College. I taught some night classes while I was teaching at the high school. I ended up getting a full-time gig in Bakersfield, and you guys, I'm really pale. I can't be in the sun that long. I loved my college. Bakersfield College was amazing. My students were incredible, but I missed my family. I missed being able to spend time outdoors during the summer, because it was basically the surface of the sun. So I ended up moving back when I got the position at Chabot College, and I feel beyond lucky to be here. All right, so there was another question. Let's make sure I answered all of Cammie's. Becoming a teacher, pursuing career path. Yeah, some of it just was happenstance, that I found a thing that I loved, and I got really lucky that I was able to start that early in life. I thought for sure that I was going to be a veterinarian. I was a veterinary technician for 4 years. I volunteered at a veterinary hospital from the time I was like 8 through high school. And then I was a technician, and then I volunteered and shadowed vets at zoos to see if that was an interest, if I wanted to be a wildlife vet or an exotic vet. And ultimately, I didn't want to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be a teacher, and I found that by accident. Truthfully, one of the best pieces of advice that I can give people is try something. If you think you want to be a nurse, go intern at a hospital. Doesn't matter if you're in janitorial. Get exposure to the hospital environment. Because what if at the end of the day, you go through all of pre-nursing and you get into nursing school and you go through all of nursing school to find out that that isn't the career that holds your heart. You don't like the interaction and the responsibility that you hold, then that's not the right fit for you. The best internship I ever did was I studied chlorine resistance and bacteria. Don't tell Dr. C. I hated every minute of it. I would pipette and I'd be like, I wonder if this pipette could go all the way through my eye into my brain if I have to do this for another minute. Boom, 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 boom. And even though the concept of the research was so cool, we were studying bacteria that could survive in living in bleach, so that if we could cultivate these bacteria, then we could better understand how to kill them and help deal with bacteria that are resistant in hospitals. So the research idea was so cool, but the day-to-day sucked. I hated it. And they would have paid for my PhD. And I found out, luckily, only spending 2 semesters doing that research, that it wasn't the field for me. So get your foot in the door, try something. There was an amazing question by Jimmy about what would happen if we, if we added rabbits to, added rabbits, okay. Pause, let me pull up a different video. I'm gonna pause the recording. Pause, stop recording. And I wanna screen share that this is a PowerPoint that I used to teach to my general biology class. And so Jimmy asked this incredible question about if our issue with invasive species like bullfrogs. So bullfrogs are a non-native species. We introduced them, we added them to the environment, and now they're causing critical issues for the western pond turtle. Could we add a predator? And the answer is not in California, but we have tried this approach before, and Australia is basically the poster child of how this has gone terribly awry. We have tried to do this, and it turns out that the ecology, the intricacies of a food web are way beyond what we can anticipate and understand until, oops, we've made a mistake. And Australia had a big issue. Bunnies were introduced, cute little fuzzy bunnies. And these bunnies were introduced for hunting purposes. And then we decided to implement what's called biological control. So we tried a couple of things because rabbits were overpopulating like nobody's business. Look at this. God, there was this island here. The population within 6 years went from 20,000 rabbits to 130,000 rabbits. And the rabbits, because they dig, were causing huge issues to agriculture and erosion of soil. And so it was a big, big problem. So we decided we wanted to deal with it. And what we did is we added poison. So we thought, okay, this is a non-biological control. First, we tried poison, and it ended up being really labor intensive and time consuming. We added a bunch of poison, and it was ultimately considered inhumane. So we decided, you know what we should do? We should give them a disease, a virus. So we used mosquitoes to spread a disease that killed rabbits, and it caused them to bleed to death and have seizures within 10 days. Still pretty cruel, but effective until, well, you guessed it, natural selection. The rabbits that weren't susceptible to this virus lived, continued to breed, and now this virus wasn't effective anymore. So we did it again. And when the rabbits became resistant to that second virus, we had this really cool idea. Cats. We're going to add cats to the environment. Oops. It turns out that cats preferred to eat goannas. And goannas are the only native predator of rabbits. So cats were eating the only predator of rabbits, more than they were eating rabbits. So the population of rabbits increased. Oops. Oh man. So basically, the intricacies of the food web are just beyond what we could totally pull off managing in the environment. And so we haven't added a species to take out the actual bullfrog. Instead, we try to manage it with humans taking out adult bullfrogs. Wildlife biologists collect and harvest the eggs of bullfrogs and kill them to help eliminate the future populations of them. But honestly, right now, we don't have a perfect solution for bullfrogs, and they continue to be an issue. Let's see. Other questions that we got. I think that covers it. All right, well, thank you guys.